So our presentation is called Complacency and Complicity in Higher Education. And my name is Sayan Grover. I'm a junior at KU studying American Studies and Global International Studies. My presentation partner was not able to make it today due to unexpected circumstances, but we are a mutual aid project based in the Lawrence community with the aim of building solidarity throughout the community and fighting food insecurity and food apartheid amongst the marginalized folks within our community. Um, and so our accomplishments so far have been nearly $25,000 raised and distributed on pantry runs, as well as direct distributions and mutual aid requests throughout the community to help folks get back on their feet and build solidarity throughout the community. Our average donation tends to be between $5 to $10, so small donations really power this project. And recently we hit 1,000 followers on Instagram, and our social media presence has been growing since we started almost a year ago. And earlier in the fall, we organized a town hall with Kansas Appleseed and Representative Hasswood to discuss food apartheid and potential solutions such as ending the food sales tax. So today's presentation is going to be a little bit more different from past presentations that we've done about like our project and mutual aid. We kind of want to talk about the shoulders of giants upon who we stand. So radical activism on college campuses. We think it's important to cover that history and show the influence of that in our work today. So I want to start by talking about the demand for Black studies in San Francisco State, which really started student activism across the country. And it started off with the Black Student Union at San Francisco State organizing on campus and in Black communities, including doing mutual aid projects with Black kids in the community. And they ended up fighting for work study jobs for Black students, admission slots for Black students, and other accomplishments at the time. And so as this movement grew, Asian and Latino students also joined the struggle and demanded admission slots, but they were told to share the ones allotted to Black students. And so as a result of this, the groups of students of color joined in solidarity and formed the Third World Liberation Front, including the Asian American students at UC Berkeley who aligned themselves with the Black Panthers in solidarity. And these movements connected their struggles to liberation movements across the Third World, including the National Liberation Front in Vietnam. And one of the most important things that I've been researching lately is the Third World News Review, started by Cedric Robinson at UC Berkeley, which was a radio station that provided a non-US centric lens on Third World news. And so this all culminated in a large student strike, two of the longest student strikes in US history, at the university, at San Francisco State University. And this started with the Black Student Union and expanded with the Third World Liberation Front. And from the very first day, there was police brutality and violence against the students who were fighting simply for ethnic studies to be on campus, and as well as an increase in opportunities for students of colors. And eventually this strike culminated in the movement spreading across the nation, including to KU, and a Department of Ethnic Studies was created at San Francisco State. And so University of Kansas also has this history, with KU being known as the Berkeley of the Midwest due to its radical activism during the 60s and 70s. Rallies and strikes in front of Strong Hall gathered thousands of students protesting the murder of Rick Dowdell by the Lawrence PD, as well as calling for an ethnic studies department at KU. And a major sit-in was at Strong Hall in 1970, which was a major direct action and led to the creation of the different ethnic studies departments that exist today. And so then I want to connect this to the advocacy that KU students are doing today. For example, the sit-in in Strong Hall in March 2021 in response to the restructuring of DEI and the termination of Black queer staff as well as threats to ethnic studies departments. This had many students and faculty and grad students join in at the sit-in and call for more transparency and involvement of students of color that centered our voices. And LFK Eats was heavily involved in this. Firstly, many of our organizers were part of the organizing for this sit-in, but we also fed the protesters, as well as clothed and brought blankets and pillows for the protesters as we stayed overnight. And this kind of like proves what Bell Hooks kind of talks about, when mutual aid isn't just a feel-good thing. We have to center marginalized communities, in addition to, the feeding and hunger activism that we're doing in the broader community. And so I think that it's important to kind of look at what Bell Hooks says in Feminism is for Everybody, in that a lot of these movements are co-opted by the university. Going back to the Strong Hall sit-in, now there's a huge mural picture and plaque in Strong Hall of the students that did the sit-in in the 70s. And it kind of ignores the history of university backlash and the police brutality that was used against those students during those protests. And I think we see this in academia today too, as we see theory being written for an academic audience and co-opting the radical thought of activists in the community. And so I think one goal for this presentation is how university faculty and administration can get involved. And part of that is opening your wallets, supporting mutual aid groups across the community. And one example is one of my favorite professors, Dr. Tucker, who regularly donates and brings in materials such as pillows and blankets and coordinates with the organizers directly, in addition to the academic work that she's doing. And also, being a professor comes with influence. And so the policies that we're pushing could be pushed by a lot of the professors at the university level. And then also, looking through the lens of critical university studies means recognizing the university as a neoliberal institution and recognizing the harm that the university, by existing, inflicts on the communities that are surrounding it, and how we as students can repair those relationships between the communities. And that's what LFK Eats is all about. A lot of us are students, though many of us aren't. And as students, part of our role is building those relationships with the community. And lastly, I want to thank you all for listening to this presentation. And please consider donating if you're able to. Like I said, our funds go to stocking up the pantry every day, as well as large mutual aid requests and distributions throughout the community. And then also please check out our social media at Lawrence Freedgin, Kansas on Instagram, and at LFK Eats. And please feel free to ask any questions that you have.
I love what LFK Eats is doing and kind of the mutual aid process. And how do you see the work of mutual aid organizations kind of engaging with more traditional civic engagement, like voting, and now we're in the legislative session, so lobbying for particular policies, that sort of thing? What do you see as the relationship between these different types of civic engagement?
Yeah, for sure. Although mutual aid is trying to build systems outside of traditional systems, I think that, there is still a relationship. And the perfect example of this would be the town hall that we hosted with Kansas Appleseed this past September. A lot of that was about pushing policy and meeting with our representative and making sure, that it wasn't just, we're holding our politicians accountable. And it was great to have that town hall with Representative Hasswood, because we heard input from community members. And I think that's part of the biggest things that a lot of traditional politics has been lacking these days, is that engagement with community members. But we talked about policies ranging from how to apply for how to make SNAP and other services like that more accessible to communities, and also how to end the food sales tax, since that's been on the news lately with the governor adopting that policy shortly a few months after our town hall. And I think that those policies, we have to engage with the community. We heard input from Pata Leon, another community member on his plan for sustainable agriculture and that aspect of it. So I think engaging the community with politicians to push policies that help our mutual aid project is a way that we get involved.
As we're thinking about the food tax push, that's really at the state level, which would take away 6.5% of our sales tax on food, which is the state level, but we still have local sales taxes. So I think we need to, once we see that hopefully going through, we need to start working with our city commission and county commission to say, can we also remove the local taxes so we can go down to a zero sales tax on all grocery purchases?